So thank you for inviting me here, and thank you for coming and listening about one of specific political regime on post-Soviet era and even in Europe, about Belarusian political regime. I define it like neo-authoritarian political regime, and by this definition I would like to emphasize that Belarusian political system, Belarusian political regime is one of specific on this European area, European space, because it is for that moment. It is only one political. It is only one country with non-democratic regime. Yeah, a few months ago we have example of another non-democratic country. It is Ukraine, but thanks to Maidan, thanks to the second orange, let's say, revolution, regime of Yanukovych was destroyed, and Yanukovych was overthrown. And personally, me participate in the events in Ukraine in the February of this year, and I was in Maidan and I saw on my own the clashes between militia and demonstrators, killing people and so on. But maybe at the end of my lecture about Belarus, we can speak about events in Ukraine and the future of Ukraine and Belarus in next few years, because the geopolitical process we took part on post-Soviet space shows that Russia preparing for establishing new empire. But let's speaking about political regime in Belarus, and in few words I'll try to describe you the process of the forming of the establishing of the political regime in Belarus, the brief historical period from 1991. Belarus got his independence. It was one of the 15 republics in the Soviet Union, but in 1991 it declared national independence, and from 1991 to 1994 it was a period of political transition from autocracy to the democracy. The period from 1991 to 1994 was a period of the national renaissance, was a period of recalling of the national history, because during the Soviet time, the only one history we have the history of the Soviet Union, and the Soviet ideology influence on all historical process, and even described as a specific way of the forming Belarusian culture and Belarusian language, because according to the Russian tradition, according to the Soviet tradition, Belarus during the whole period of the history was a part of the great Russian nation, like Ukraine. And this ideology Russia tried to use now to show that Belarus and Ukraine and Russia are brothers and should be together, should live together in one country, in one union. Unfortunately, the process of democratic political transformation had stopped in 1994. In 1994, it was the first presidential election, first democratic election, and from 1994 we have one president till today. Lukashenko is in power for 20 years. It was the longest dictatorship in Europe, and let's say it's rather successful, unfortunately, dictatorship in Europe and even on post-Soviet area. Let me present it is national symbols. These national symbols of of Republic of Belarus were introduced in 1991 and exist like national symbols until 1995. That is why till 1991 Belarus was named as a Belorussia. And if we made a semantic analysis of this word, we will have Belarus or Belarusia. It means that these words were connected with Russia. And after 1991, we changed the name of the country, and it became Belarus. Not Belarusia, but Belarus. It's very important things for historical and cultural and even political process. So the period, the beginning period of Lukashenko reigns in Belarus was described like electoral revolution. It was a specific definition for what's happening in Belarus. The problem of this electoral revolution and the appearing Lukashenko as a political leader in Belarus has deep roots in political culture of Belarusian society, in political conscience, because our society till today has very strong authoritarian roots, very strong patriarchal culture. It means that for almost 300 years Belarus hasn't democratical tradition, because from 18th century Belarus was a part of the Russian Empire. Then after 1917 Belarus was a part of the Soviet Union, and during this long period emperors and Soviet rulers introduced authoritarian mentality in Belarusian conscience. National elite were constantly destroyed or repressed by Soviet system, and that is why when Belarus received independence, our society didn't know what to do with the freedom, what to do with the democracy, how to live in a condition of freedom and democracy. And unfortunately, as it happened during any of transformation process, there is a period of instability, unpredictability, and a strong period of social political frustration, when government is in crisis, when people who are ruling the country do not know what to do, like it's happening now in Ukraine. So, and Belarus has its own process of instability and unpredictability, when old system was crushed and the new system were not established yet. And unfortunately, this period of instability was connected with the period of democracy, with a transition to the democracy. That is why in a conscience of the society, democracy had and even now has a negative connotation. Democracy in a people conscience connected with chaos, with disorder, with instability. And even now, the attitude to the democratical values in Belarusian society is very negative, in spite of the fact that Lukashenko ruled during 20 years. Of course, it is a result of this ruling. But Lukashenko used, during his own political campaign, he used this frustration, social frustration, economic instability to create own program. He criticized opposition, criticized national opposition. He tried to create a vision of national Belarusian opposition like a nationalist, which wants to make all Belarusians speak Belarusian language. The same mechanism was used by Russia, as you know, in Crimea during the period of conflict with Ukraine. Then Lukashenko criticized also bureaucracy, the old post-Soviet nomenclatura. The problem is it was the same, in some cases, the same process was in Slovakia when all key positions in government, in administration, were occupied by former communists. And these people, let's say communists with a new label, they didn't want to do anything, anything real for changes. That is why Lukashenko blamed them in corruption. They blamed them in ineffectiveness, and people really liked him. And during the election, the first and the last presidential election, free and democratic election, Lukashenko got 80% of support. It was a really great victory for him. So, and he tried to create a vision of people's support for today's. So, what was the mechanism of forming authoritarian regime in Belarus? The central role in authoritarianization of Belarus system took a referendum. A referendum is probably one of the effective instruments for authoritarian ruler to use popular support in order to install the ruling. So the first referendum was held in 1995. The referendum in one way extended the authority of Lukashenko. Of course, all national symbols were changed. In Belarus, Russian language received status of the state language. So we have two state languages in Belarus. But unfortunately, Russian language has a dominant position. The second referendum took place in 1996. The constitution was radically changed, and Belarus, from parliamentarian republic, transformed to a strong presidential republic, and president for today possessed unlimited power. His decree, his order has a status of law. He even doesn't need, this decree doesn't need to be legitimized by the parliament. The third referendum was held in 2004. During this referendum, any limits in terms for presidents were cancelled. So, according to the new constitution, Lukashenko can stay as a president forever, for the end of his personal physical life. During this period of referendums, there were some crucial steps taken by Lukashenko, by the administration, in order to consolidate the system, because it is not, the referendum is not enough to keep power, to make this power strong. It was several elements, institutions and structures created during the beginning of his ruling. Later I explain and analyze them more deeply, but I would like to mention here about creation of the state ideology. In 2003, in Belarus was created and implemented state ideology, like it was in the Soviet Union. It is a mixture of different ideas, but it has very important things. It should influence first of all, conscience of students, because state ideology, it is obligatory for studying in the university, and the student has to pass exams from the state ideology, has to listen to lectures about state ideology and what is the structure of the ideology and what is the main ideas. I tell you a little bit later. So another element which consolidated the system was the creation of so-called presidential control structure. President appointed all governors, all mayors in the country. They are not elected. They are appointed by president, like it was in Russia, with little changes now. But president keep control over all administrative and political institution in the country. So several mass pro-government organizations were created. The membership in this organization, like Belarusian Republican Union of Youth, is obligatory for students. It's obligatory for school children of last years. So, and this institution and even media, I mentioned about it in future, it's allow political system to control public sphere and all political process in the country. What is, thanks to all this process, specific political system were created in Belarus. And there are a lot of different definition of political system in Belarus. Of course, there are official description what Belarusian regime is and non-official or independent definition. According to the official ideology, according to the official political science, Belarusian political regime is a democracy, because we have election, president is elected during the open, wide and a national election. All institutions like parliaments, like local councils are formed thanks to the election. So electoral process allowed officials says about real developed democracy, which is not, which has no difference if we compare this system with Western democracy. Of course, we also have political party, we have opposition in the system. So opposition can participate in election. For example, during last election, presidential election in 2010, we have 9 independent candidates. So that is why formally, if we speak about institution and procedure, yeah, we can speak about evidence of the democracy, but in practice, in reality, it's absolutely nonsense because in the Soviet Union we also have had a democracy. So, and Lukashenko itself, by ideology and official ideologists, depicted as a person who saves the country, who creates a stable, state on post-Soviet area, where the people feel themselves very comfortable. And so even propaganda sometimes create a image of Belarus like an island of stability in Europe. And it's very, let me say, it's very effective. The propaganda influence on public conscience very effectively. So, according to the independent analysts and independent political scientists, Belarus can be defined as a neo-totalitarian system, as a neo-communism, because many post-Soviet symbols like Lenin's monuments, the name of the street, we still have street named after Lenin, after Marx, named after Engels, Rosa Luxemburg, and other famous communist activists. So according to the common idea, according to the common atmosphere, Belarus looked like Soviet Union, but in a small, inside small territories. That is why some of analysts like Sannikov, Sannikov is politician, but his point is that Belarus is neo-totalitarian system because the state's political control of the states is overwhelming. So personally, I didn't agree with him. So another definition is that Belarusian regime is a fascist regime, that it is a Lukashism, the specific system, specific regime. Speaking about such definition, I would say that it is an attempt to create demon's vision, demolition of Lukashenko ruling, just to threat, to fear Western country. Very often political opponents of Lukashenko try to use such definition in order to get support, financial and material support for their fighting against political regime and Lukashenko in Belarus. So there were also Western definition of Belarusian regime and Lukashenko regime in Belarus. Unfortunately, until the middle of 21st century, the knowledge about Belarus, Western knowledge about Belarus, and even European knowledge about Belarus was very limited. Belarus was defined only like a black hole in Europe. And there was even a real anecdote. When the first leader of Belarus, Stanislav Shushkevich, visited United States, he was told by one of the senators, "We like your country every time, especially after you have got rid Ceausescu." Only last year, Americans, analysts, European analysts tried to understand what was going on, what is going on in Belarus. For today, there are a lot of definitions. One of the popular definitions is that Belarus is a sultanistic regime. It is a illiberal democracy. It's a definition of Farid Zakaria. And another definition is that Belarus is elected dictatorship because, as I mentioned, some of democratical procedure are present in Belarus. But on my mind, Belarusian system and Belarusian regime is not fitted any of these categories or any of this definition. The reason why Belarus has a specific political regime is connected with the style of the functioning and of this functioning in this system, and of course according the specific of the social and economic policy which is provided. So it is Belarusian political system, Belarusian political regime combines features, combine elements from different system, also undemocratical system and democratical system. I described here two elements, two structures. From the one hand, there are many institutes, many mechanisms which were absorbed from old Soviet system, but there are also many elements and many structures which were created during the period of the transformation and still effectively used by contemporary political system. What was taken from Soviet system? First of all, it is a centralized administrative system which is built and lean upon bureaucracy. Another element, it is a state ideology. As you know, in the Soviet Union, there was one totalitarian state ideology. The third element, it is a state pro-government organization. In Soviet Union, there was Komsomol, was a communist party, and almost the same structure exists now in Belarus. Another element, it is a state media propaganda which is used by social mobilization, because totalitarian systems are based on a mass mobilization. It's used mass for own political support, and almost the same try to do political regime in Belarus. This next element, it is a partly state-controlled economy. The state in Belarus still controls economic system. There are a lot of state enterprises which is controlled by the government. The directors of these enterprises are appointed by the president, personally by the president. The state order these enterprises to produce production according to the plans and wish of the state. And the last element, it is a wide political control and systematic repression against not only opposition, but also against people who has another vision about what is going on in Belarus. So from the democratical period of the history, there also were taken several important elements which is used effectively by the system. It is first of them, it is a constitutional separation of powers. We have executive, legislative, and executive formally powers. We have a regular election, as I mentioned, of the central and local authority. We even have limited political and informational pluralism thanks to the internet, thanks to the satellite television. We have religious pluralism. In the Soviet Union, for example, in a socialistic system, religious was forbidden. But in Belarus, especially Orthodox Church plays an important role in ideological system, in legitimation of authoritarian ruling. The same process takes place in Russia, where Orthodox Church and Orthodox itself religion took central part in a new official ideology in Russia. We have liberal component of economy. We have private business, not in a huge corporation, but in another level, like small and middle enterprises. For example, in the Soviet Union, such things were absolutely impossible. And if you, in the Soviet time, in the Soviet Union, had your own business, private business, you could be arrested and imprisoned even. And we have, of course, wide individual autonomy. In a totalitarian system, state tried to control not only public sphere, but also individual style of living, individual style of thinking. In Belarus, there is individual pluralism and individual freedom. You can do everything you want until you enter in policy. outside of the political process, outside of public process, you can do anything you want. You can watch any film you want, read book, any book you want, and so on. In Soviet Union, it was also forbidden. In Belarus, the process of the consumption is the same like in Europe or United States. But when you enter to politics, when you want to participate in election like independent candidate, you will have problems. Very real problems. You can be arrested, you can be detained, you can be kicked off from your job, lost your job. So, and that is why it is a very comfortable situation. Ideology and the state media just make people be outside of the policy, of the politics, and involved in their personal things. And really, it has results. Politically, people in Belarus are very passive. Let me say about ideological system and ideology itself. As I told you, stated ideology was introduced and was implemented in 2003. It realized several functions. First of all, it is function of explanation. It's try to explain people why do we have such system like we have now. And the central idea of the explanation function is concentrated on thesis that democracy is not good for Belarus. From the one hand, we have democratical institution, but freedom and democracy itself has a negative results, has a negative influence on Belarusian, and very often they used the example from the period of transformation from 1991 to 1994. Also, during this last year, they effectively used these events which took part in Ukraine in 2004, which took part in Georgia after Revolution of Rose, especially when Orange opposition came to power in Ukraine after 2004, they were not able to create a good condition for democratical changes, and as a result, Yanukovych came to power in 2010. And ideology tried to use this example and prove that opposition in Belarus are not ready and really do not want what to do with this democracy. That is why it will be better to keep this system untouchable. Another function is mobilization. Ideology tried to prove to people that they obliged to support Lukashenko, because Lukashenko is only one person who can guarantee for Belarusian stability and prosperity. That is why during election, Belarusians are obliged to support Lukashenko. And of course, the function of manipulation. It's tried to create a picture that the system which was created in Belarus, one of the best. If we compare it with Russia and Ukraine, very often they try to show that Russia is corrupted oligarchic system, and a simple person in Russia, for example, have no any rights, because everything is decided with the help of the money. In Belarus, regime very oftenly use specific criminal processes for increasing ideology influence. For example, the fighting with corruption. Fighting with corruption, it is one of the elements of the social policy in Belarus. And Lukashenko can imprison any administrative officer, any head of high official department. And such action, such processes are very popular in Belarus. It creates illusions that Lukashenko care about simple people. And the main formula of the state ideology is that we are living stable now, we are living in good condition now. So to continue live in this condition, we should to do everything to support this system. So in this case, you shouldn't participate in a demonstration, you shouldn't support opposition because opposition will destroy this stability. So the Lukashenko is the only guarantee for the stability and for the rights of the simple common person. So the structure of ideological system, it's presents, as I mentioned, everywhere. So there is special ideological committee in a presidential administration, in a local administration, special ideological committee in schools, secondary schools and the university. And there are people who are responsible for implementation of ideology, for reading lecture, for providing special classes about ideology in Belarus. So, and it has also control function because those people who are responsible for ideological process in university, for example, they are also looking for students, for example, for students who has alternative opinion. And if in a group of the students there are such students who has alternative vision about situation in Belarus, about political process in Belarus, so they will have a problem with that, because except so-called ideological commissars in universities, there are also officer from KGB, it's Committee of State Security, it's old Soviet abbreviation. In Soviet Union there was a KGB structure, in Belarus it's remained. So in every institution, in every administrative office, there is officially there is a KGB officer who control and watching who has alternative opinion or doesn't agree with official propaganda. So this is a real concrete book about state ideology. So I didn't mention that there isn't an official name of the ideology. For example, in the Soviet Union there was a communist ideology of Marxism, Leninism. But in Belarus, the official name of the ideology, the state ideology, the ideology of the state of Belarus, or Belarusian state. So it means that it presents ideology of the state, and there are very many specific features of ideology, but as I mentioned you, there were written about 100 books about the state ideology, and sometimes even author of this book doesn't know what this state ideology means. It's just another element of the administrative control, of the public and administrative control in state university, especially for students, because Lukashenko and his surrounding know very well that the student is a central element, it's an engine for changes. That is why it is necessary to control students' mind. And the ideology, it's a good instrument just to make students stupid, and just to make them not thinking about situation in the country. I have dealt with the students because I was a teacher in the university, and it was very difficult to explain, because even 10 years ago, the conscience of the students were really detransformed, were really corrupted by these black ideas, and they didn't believe that Belarus is an autocratic country, that there is a repression, that people sometimes are killed in Belarus because of their opinions and their views. And the problem is that humanitarian science, like history, like political science, and even sociology, became a technical elaborator of the state ideology. And it is obligatory for political science department to prepare such books, to implement ideology, to read lectures about how the life in Belarus beautiful. And it's create a condition for degradation of the humanitarian science in Belarus. So, and there was even an example in Grodno University. There was a department of the history, and professors and lecturers on this department were in opposition to the rector, and were in ideological opposition to the Lukashenko regime. So rector closed the department of the history, just close it. And all the teachers, lecturers of the history were fired from the university. So it is easiest and simplest way to solve any kind of ideological problems. So it's another. So this book you can buy in any of bookshop in Minsk, in Belarus. So another element, as I mentioned, it is a structures or organization which are used for mobilization and physical control of population. So in 2001 and 2002, several mass pro-government organizations were created. From the beginning from the school, from the school children to the workers, there is a system of organizational control. For example, school children in a secondary school should be a member of two organizations. Pioneers, it's old Soviet name of children organization, and successors. So the member of this organization are school children to 16, from 8 to 16. So they participate in activity of this organization, and the number of the members of this organization in Belarus, it's 400,000 members. And as I mentioned, it is obligatory to be a member of this organization. Another level of the organizational participation and organizational control, it's Belarusian Patriotic Union of Youth. It unites about 500,000 people. It is children after 16 to 35, students and the young specialists in universities, in factories. And the membership of in this organization is obligatory also. If you are students and you don't want to participate in this organization, don't want to be a member of this organization, you will have problems with your exams. If you are a worker and you don't want to be a member of this organization, you can easily lose your job. So in 2008, there was a quasi-party organization created. It is so-called Belarus organization. The members of this organization are officials, teachers, people who are working on administration, and so on. So the number of the members of this organization is 80,000 people. So, and also, if we speak about mass media propaganda, it is necessary to say that the states control all mass media. So there are 3-4 TV channels in Belarus, and their state channels. They controlled by the state and, of course, used as an instrument for propaganda, especially during election. Of course, there are some kind of informational pluralism, because nowadays it is impossible to control all media space, like internet, especially if we speak about European countries. But still, we have official newspaper like Soviet Belarus. It is an official newspaper which is financed and supported by the state presidential administration. And the prescription for this newspaper is obligatory also. So this is an element of visual propaganda, which is often used during presidential election campaign. It's posters which hang over Minsk, or in other regional center. So the main elements of the state propaganda, it is connection with the great victory during World War II, that Belarusian took important role in a victory of the Soviet people during the World War II, and that is why veterans are supported by the states and by the youth. So this is an example of young children, which are used also like an element of propaganda. Sports is also an element of the state propaganda, like, as it was in the Soviet Union. And a winner during the Olympic Games, supported by the state bought them flats, cars, and gave them a great sum of money. So another rather interesting and very important element of visual propaganda and instrument for mass mobilization is parades. Like it was in the Soviet Union, just a regime tried to demonstrate their own force, the military strength and the readiness for fighting against the West. It is an example of one of parade in Belarus. So it's almost the same like it was in the Soviet Union and now in North Korea, with a mobilization, with obligatory participation in these events. So sometimes during the parade, authority try to show the result of the industry. It's cars which is produced by Belarusian enterprises. Tractors during the... So, and you see here the general and his son. Lukashenko with his youngest son. So, if we speak about pluralism and so-called specific democratic elements, it is necessary to say that there are a lot of oppositional organizations and even political parties which is participated in political process. In a totalitarian system, such things like functioning of the opposition is impossible. Even in China, in spite the fact that many Western scientists described China like a transformed autocracy, there isn't opposition. There isn't official oppositional organization. In Belarus, there are 15 registered political parties, and 7 of them are oppositional. So there is a name of this organization: Belarusian Popular Front, Christian Conservative Party, United Civic Party, Belarusian Social Democratic Party, Belarusian Social Democratic Gromada, and others. And it is very interesting fact how authority controls opposition. The one of elements of control is just splitting organization. We have sometimes we have 3-4 organizations with the same ideology. We have 3 Social Democratic Party. We have 2 Belarusian Popular Front Party. So, and the conflict inside opposition, because opposition is not united, it is a constant inside conflict. It creates an opportunity for easy control for this oppositional organization, and opposition is not real threat for political regime, because for contemporary time it is thanks due to this splitting and constant conflict, it is not popular among people. So it is a leader of different political party and organization. So this is a leader of a movement for freedom. It's a former candidate for presidential office in 2006. This is a leader of Nikolaev. He is a leader of movement Tell the Truth, and the former candidate for presidential election in 2010. And it is another candidate, and during the last election 5 oppositional candidates were arrested and in prison. So, and this is a picture about the problem of popularity of opposition. As I mentioned, due to the inside conflict and moral, let's say, discreditation of the opposition, the support for opposition is very low. Even in crisis period of Belarusian history, for example, in 2011, there was a crucial economic crisis in Belarus, and a level of Lukashenko support fell down to 30%. But in the same time, the level of support for opposition remained unchanged. It was about 60% of support for Belarusian opposition. And if you look at the picture, there wasn't serious changes in Lukashenko's support. And one of the reasons why people still supported Lukashenko, in spite of the fact that he is a leader for 20 years, it is economic and social politics in Belarus. And of course, different methods of political control. So the question, how to get popularity? So there is several methods how Lukashenko reached such stable support for him. First of all, of course, repressions against his opponents, political control, because as I mentioned, all political institutions and public institutions are controlled by the state. Of course, permanent Russian support. For example, during last 10-12 years, Belarus has got in different form support about $60 billion. And it is very interesting thing that Lukashenko, in spite of the fact that he controls all this money, he tried to use it for organizing social support, for different social programs, for constructing roads, for building different kind of public object, and it really creates some kind of real political support for him. And one of one of conclusion is that without successful social and economic system, economic policy, Lukashenko would fail in keeping power in Belarus for 20 years. And if we compare Belarusian regime with Russian, for example, or with Ukrainian, because now there are a lot of questions why revolution was possible in Ukraine in 2013 and 2014, and why it is not impossible in Belarus. In spite of the repression, there is another factor. It is exactly what I said, social policy, because Ukrainian political regime and Yanukovych itself was corrupted. He used public money for building his palaces, his surroundings, stole money, but Lukashenko is not egoistic. So of course there are corruption in Belarus. And of course Lukashenko is not a poor man. His wealth is treated to be about $11 billion. But at the same time, he tried to use resources for solving real social and economic problems, and that is why people are still supported him. So that is why I say that Belarusian political regime is not egoistic if we compare it with the Russian or with Ukrainian. So this is an example of that's how cities in Belarus looks like. So it's a central street of Minsk. This is a national library which was built during the Lukashenko period. As a conclusion, I would try to outline the main political sceneries, possible changes in Belarus. The first opportunity, the first variant for changes, it is a revolution. But as I said, it is hardly possible in Belarus because of weakness of Belarusian opposition, because of the disorganization of opposition. Of course, economic crisis can create condition for mass strikes, for mass revolts, but still I don't believe that such kind of thing like it's took place in Ukraine can take in Belarus. A second scenario, it is transformation, which could be provided by a political elite, like perestroika in the Soviet Union. But such kind of transformation is possible only if Lukashenko will have physical and mental problems, when the surrounding will start to take political decision, because for that moment all important political decisions are taken by Lukashenko. Third scenario, it is political changes which will be provoked by Russia. Of course, Russia interested in keeping control of Belarus, and they need Lukashenko, because Lukashenko guarantees that Belarus will not go to the direction toward Europe, and will be dependent on Russia. But when Russia creates Eurasian Union and Belarus became a member of this Eurasian Union, of course, Moscow will decide to change Lukashenko, because they will not need him anymore. So, and the last scenario, one of the possible on my mind, it is establishing of hereditary autocracy. Lukashenko has two candidates for power. They are his sons. It is a older son, Lukashenko's son, Viktor Lukashenko. He is one of the members of a Security Council and takes an active role in taking political decisions. He controls all secret services in Belarus, KGB, security services, militia, and actually he concentrated a lot of real power in his hand. And of course, Lukashenko, if Alexander Lukashenko, if he will have problems with his health, he tried to give his power, his authority to his son. And his younger son, Nikolai Lukashenko, he is about 9 years for that moment, and Lukashenko takes him everywhere, even on official visits, even on a meeting with other presidents, and he can try to give the power to him. This is an example, one of the last visits, Lukashenko's last visit to Venezuela and meeting with Hugo Chavez. So this is the end. Thank you, and you're welcome for asking any question.
It's time for questions.
I was Charles. You spoke about the opposition parties, that most of them are split into several factions, like more social democratic faction, etc. To what extent, according to, in your opinion, this split is supported by the ruling elite, by Lukashenko? Because I know similar situation from Azerbaijan, and here the situation is caused by the government that simply tries to split the opposition party. So is it comparable, or is it real?
Yeah, it's absolutely on the same level. For example, just one example from presidential election in 2006. Whole opposition decided to have a single candidate for election. It was Alexander Milinkiewicz, and almost all organizations agree and participate in Croatian Union Front. But suddenly, another oppositional organization, Social Democratical Party, decided to participate separately in presidential election, and they proposed their own candidate, Alexander Kazulin. So in this case, there were two oppositional candidates. In order to split the idea of the revolution and organization of the mass protest on a square in Minsk, and it was very effectively because there was two candidates and they fight against each other, not against Lukashenko. Until the end, till the day of election, they didn't want to unite. So another example, it is the election in 2010 when Lukashenko allowed to participate for 9 oppositional candidates. And many of the candidates, because one of the procedure to be a candidate, you have to gather 100,000 signatures of people, so to prove that you are supported. And many candidates, oppositional candidates, didn't gather this 100,000 signatures, but authority registered all of them, just to create instability inside oppositional camp, but even in spite such mechanism and such methods, there was clashes in Minsk. But even during this mass protest, oppositional candidates and leaders, they didn't know what to do with the people who came to the square. One of the leaders proposed to go one direction, another to another direction, and there wasn't coordination, there wasn't organization, and this is one of the reasons why people do not want to participate in a mass protest action, because they know that oppositional leaders do not want to risk, they do not want to participate in or organize real mass protest. and there is a deep frustration among Belarusian society if we speak about support of opposition. And another problem that many of the oppositional leader or party leaders kept their position for 10 or for 12 years as the chairmen of these parties and of this organization. So we have the same situation in the party like we have in the state. For example, Lukashenko ruled the country for 20 years, but some of oppositional leader rule their party for 10 years. So there is no difference even in the way of the thinking or the way of the ruling of the organizations.
What is the relationship between Lukashenko and Putin like? Do they like each other?
So after Putin became a president, Lukashenko didn't like him because there was idea, and Lukashenko believed this idea that he would be a president of Belarus and Russia Union. He wanted to create the union state, and it exists now, Belarus and Russia Union state. And he do all his best to create this union and to become a president, because he has a real support, and he was popular in Russia during the Yeltsin period. And for him it was unexpected that Putin became a president. And after Putin became a president, the conflict between Putin, personal conflict between Putin and Lukashenko has begun. But Lukashenko understood that without Russian support, without oil and gas supply, without credits, his regime will be unstable. That is why he have to obey Putin. He achieved all Putin's orders. For example, Russia wanted to deploy military base on Belarus, and last year this base was deployed in Belarus. It's a military air base in Belarus. So for Russia it was necessary to organize military drills on the territory of Belarus. So these drills were organized in last year, 2 years ago, and Belarus is one of the important Russian allies. And in spite of the personal conflict between Lukashenko and Putin, Belarus unfortunately is under the Russian strategic, political, and economical control.
In your opinion, what are the most important influences on the stability of new authoritarian regimes? You mentioned that authoritarian regimes are more sophisticated and more stable. Is the influence of, for example, cultural element? For example, you mentioned Orthodox Church is very important for Russia and Belarus case, right?
Yeah, Orthodox Church. It is Moscow, so Russian Church of the Moscow Patriarchy. So there is Orthodox Church with a different denomination, but in Belarus it's a dominance of Russian Church, Russian Orthodox Church of the Moscow Patriarchy. It means that Belarusian Orthodox Church is totally controlled by the Russian Patriarch, by the Moscow Church. So, and Russia use church for sometimes for undermining legitimacy of political regime or for supporting this regime. And in Belarus, Orthodox Church till today are used as an element of legitimacy, as an element of influence public conscience, and the Orthodox Church is supported by the state. For example, in 2003, the Concordate was signed between the state and between Orthodox Church. According to this agreement, states provide all material support for Orthodox Church, for building churches, for Orthodox education, and so on. So, and in its own church, Orthodox Church provide ideological support. They say that Lukashenko is a real father of Belarusian people, so he creates a good condition for Orthodox Church development. So that is why there isn't conflict between church and between political regime. That is why I didn't agree with those political scientists who describe Belarusian regime as a sultanistic regime, because there was one of the specific features of sultanistic regime. There was a strong religious ideological opposition of Catholic, for example, church. If we speak about Latin America countries, or Poland, for example, or even South Korea, when during the autocracy, Catholic Church was one of the real strong instrument for democratization, for transformation of the authoritarian regime. In Belarus, even Catholic Church, because another important role in Belarusian cultural and public sphere plays Catholic Church. But even Catholic Church is not in opposition. For example, in Poland, in 19th, Catholic Church played a very important role for opposition support, and it was ideological. It was ideological instrument during the fighting with communist regime in Poland, but in Belarus, Catholic Church is a neutral, totally neutral. It isn't supports Lukashenko, but it is not in opposition. But Orthodox Church is totally supports political regime.
My question: I saw the textbooks in the presentation on state Belarusian ideology, but all were in Russian.
Yes.
What is the position of Belarusian language in system of education and administrative system?
So it's almost absent in administrative and in absent. Yeah. All lectures in university, in schools are in Russian language. Only Russian. So in the school there is lessons of Belarusian language, but math, geography, geometry is taught in Russian. So in a lesson of Belarusian language you can speak in Belarusian, but even history, all other lessons and lectures are really in Russian. All administrative documentary are in Russian language. Belarusian, unfortunately, on a very marginal condition, and the only one group who use Belarusian language, it is an opposition, intellectual opposition and political opposition. It is only from 3 to 8% of the whole population in Belarus who speaks Belarusian language. So it is one of the elements of destroying national culture, Russification, destroying national history, and this factor is used by Russia also, because there isn't inside. In Belarus there isn't inside force, strength, cultural or psychological strength to resist to Russian influence. All media, all state media is in Russian language.
But is it true that a lot of Belarusian intelligence was chased after the Second World War in Belarus?
So they were chased before the war. First of all, during this great repression in 1933, 1937, almost all who were connected with the national renaissance in that period after revolution were killed by NKVD. So it is one of the reasons why we still have authoritarian regime, because real cultural national elite was destroyed by Soviet system.
As far as I know, Lukashenko was against the Maidan, right?
Was against Maidan.
Yeah.
Yes.
But a few days ago, he met a Ukrainian leader in Minsk, and after this meeting, he changed his opinion, and he declared that they agreed on every topic they discussed. And my question is, why did he change his opinion? Why did he accept the Ukrainian leader in Minsk?
Frankly speaking, he didn't change his mind, because Belarus, during UN commission and voting about Crimea issue, he supported Russia. There were 11 states like Zimbabwe, like Venezuela, like Syria, and Belarus in it, which supported Russian aggression in Crimea. So Lukashenko tried to play the role of negotiator between Moscow and Kiev, and the main goal of this game was to improve relationships with the European Union, because Belarus is in isolation now. And he wanted to use the situation in Ukraine for improving relationships with the West, like it was made in 2008 during the war in Georgia. And Lukashenko didn't recognize Abkhazia and South Ossetia, and it is create a good condition for improving the relationships with European Union. And during the events on Ukraine, he wanted to use this situation for the same goals, but he failed. The reason of this failure is that the pressure of the Russia was tremendous on Belarus, and he couldn't use the situation. And all his good words toward Ukraine and the meeting with Turchinov, it was absolutely formal, without a real political continuation. He totally supports Russia, and he will support Russia. And during this conflict, as you know, 24 conflicts on Crimea. Russia sent 24 planes to Belarus in order to create another front against Ukraine. So that is why this meeting was absolutely for nothing.
Is Russia anyhow dependent on Belarus, or just Russia wants another satellite state?
So Russia wants to rebuild empire, Soviet empire, under the name of Eurasian Union. It is a main goal to creation, to spread the influence over all post-Soviet states, not only Belarus, but Ukraine is a fine example. So that is why it is the only reason why Russia, why Moscow support Lukashenko. As you know, Belarus, Kazakhstan is a member of Custom Union and Economic Union, and in the May of this year, the agreements about creation of Eurasian Union will be signed. It means that the basis for Eurasian Empire will be created. And other candidates for this union, Kyrgyzia and Armenia. So it is supposed that this state will be accepted to the Custom Union and then to Eurasian Union in the summer this year. So that is why Russia support Lukashenko with credits, with discounts on gas and oil, and that is why it's defend regime on international scene and provide support for Lukashenko in order he stay in power. And we can't say that Russia depends on Belarus, vice versa.
What do you think about situation of students there in Belarus? So do you think they are stupid, or they are stuck in the system, or are there a lot of students who can think out of the box and just don't believe the system, or do they have opportunities to go abroad to see what it's like?
Thank you for the question. There was one of the, I mean, maybe one of the best Soviet writers, Boris and Arkady Strugatsky. They wrote books about future, fantastic books. So, and there was words, who control the youth, control the future. So if you control students, you can control all political process in nearest future. And of course, many things depends from individuals. If you want to read something, you will read. If you want to find knowledge, to extend your knowledge, you will do this. But majority of the people don't want and don't like to read, don't want to find some new knowledge about the world, and their position, their views depends on teachers, depends on systems. And of course, if they're functioning in such system like Belarusian system, their mind will be created according to this system interests. And this system wants students obeyed to the system. They want students don't think about political process. They want students do not participate in a political process. And political system, Belarusian political system is successfully in providing such policy, educational policy. If we speak about educational system, there is no autonomy, educational autonomy or university autonomy, like, for example, in a Western country, where the rector can be elected by the scientific community of the university, where is students' autonomy, students' self-governing, and so on. In Belarus, such things are absent. For example, rectors of the university are appointed by president. All chief of the department are appointed by the rector. So there is a system of total control. And of course, in this system, students have no autonomy. This creates difficulties for getting knowledge, for getting alternative knowledge, especially in humanitarian science. If you speak about possibility to go abroad, there is also difficulties. If the student wants to visit another university in Europe, he had to get permission from the rector. He had to apply for this permission several months before departure. And the rector will decide, allow the students to visit another university or not allow. And another moment, a real example. My colleagues, I invite my colleagues from Mogilov University to the conference to Vilnius several years ago. So 4 of my colleagues come to this conference, but after the conference they had conversation with KGB officer. And KGB officer checked them. They asked, interviewed them, what did they do during this conference, who participated in this conference, what kind of discussion took place during this conference and such things. And you can imagine what students feels when he met with KGB officer and who start to ask him about such things. That is why students prefer not to go anywhere and sit home. Yes.
Do people need any state permission when they want to go abroad? We were speaking about students.
Yes.
And the other people?
No, you can go. For other people, it is absolutely freedom in visiting other countries. It is not looks like in the Soviet Union when you was limited in your moving. It's many Belarusians goes to Litva or Poland for shopping, and it is a real problem for Belarusian authority because products, Western products, Western foods and clothing are better than Belarusian. That is why Belarusians prefer to go abroad and to buy things in Lithuania or in Poland, and they do it without any problems. But unfortunately, it's I don't know why, but it doesn't influence their mind. So they go abroad, they see how people are living there, but they remain on their own position that Lukashenko is one of the best and it's better to vote for him, and it's specific of Belarusian culture, probably.
I wonder why Lukashenko is not afraid of the internet and social media. Is it the reason that people are afraid to use the internet as a political instrument?
Yes, this is one of the problem, because according to the social studies, there are about 40% of internet user in Belarus. It is a very high level of using internet, but only 3% of user used internet like for alternative information. And most of the people use internet for entertaining or for commercial things. And of course he afraid, I mean system afraid, independent media, internet media. That is why during important political campaign or events, independent websites are blocked by authority. You haven't access to the internet during presidential election, for example. I mean to the independent media through the internet. So they are very effective in controlling information if they need it.
So, last question.
What is your opinion about the ice hockey championship?
I was a proponent of boycotting hockey championship in Belarus, like proponents of the wide sanction against political regime in Belarus. But unfortunately, influence of probably influence of those people who support Lukashenko much more efficient than influence of independent opinions. So I think it will be like a game in Sochi.
Yeah, it's like presentation like Putin Winter Games, right?
Yeah. So I think that international community should be very restrictive towards such regimes like Belarusian regime or like Russian, but as you see, European Union is too weak and have strengths probably to influence Ukraine and influence Russia and influence Belarus.